Hey guys, welcome to Beginner's Acrylic Portraiture. So the last time I ran the class, the feedback was that it was a little bit too complicated. So to be fair, acrylic portraiture is a complicated subject because we're both learning acrylics and we're learning about the face. So I'm going to try and simplify this class a little bit more. So I'm starting out, I've got my acrylic paints. We're going to do this first exercise using burnt sienna that I've just mixed into 3 tones with white. That's all I've done. I've got a flathead brush on hand, a palette knife, a sponge, and my planar head, as well as some water and paper towels. We're going to start just by practicing blending and practicing our observation. So the first thing to think about is tone, so whether something's light or dark. When it comes to painting realistically, we're more primed to view tone than we are color. So if you match the tone correctly, you can get away with doing colors that aren't quite in nature. To prep our page, we're just going to dampen down the area that we're working on. So I've put a stamp here. The colors might bleed a bit. Don't worry about that. That's absolutely fine. Now, usually, as color moves to the light, we want to add yellow and warmer tones here. We haven't done it this time, so don't use just burnt sienna and white as your standard for acrylic painting, but for the purposes of this exercise, it'll work. Now we're going to take our planar head, so everyone in class is going to have one. And here we're just getting a feel for using the paints. I'm going to start by placing down my darkest value. And I'm just using the square edge of the brush to follow along those planes. I'll have a few smaller brushes available in the class. The good thing about acrylics is that you can just keep building on them with white. So rather than watercolors where we have to be super careful, here we don't. Now, when you're plotting this out, don't forget to move into the eyes. We're doing a tonal study of the whole face, which means we're going to be using the same darker tone for the eyes. So I'm just getting the lips. Might just grab a smaller brush just to make this a little bit easier for myself. You can build up really thin layers of acrylics, but for blending purposes, you want similar thicknesses when you're blending paints together. So here, when I'm putting things down, I am using kind of a thinner layer just because for this part of the exercise, I'm getting a sense of where things are and I might be moving things around. So I'm not getting it perfect on the first go. But as I move into blending, I'm going to want to apply thicker layers of paint so that they can blend into each other to create a gradient. So once I've created my just initial glaze using lighter layers of the acrylic, I'm ready to start blending. And as I mentioned before, here we're going to want to put thicker layers side by side. So I'm going to come back in with some of that darker color. Then I'm going to put my mid-tone in here. And I'm going to quickly blend these together by feathering my brush over the area. I'm going to clean my brush, come in with the lighter area here. Bring it all the way up to the edge and again quickly feather over the area. So we're blending into wet paint. We're creating a gradient by just very quickly moving over the areas that are wet. And I'm just coming in with this little ridge on top of the head. Coming in with a slightly darker layer here, just section by section. And I'm just gonna make a darker layer on this side. So I've just done this with my brush, but you can also experiment using your sponge to blend, just by dabbing your sponge over the paint as it dries. Moving down, and remember you can re-wet your page. So, you know, if you want to assist the paint in just spreading a little bit more easily, just wet down the page. This is really thick paper that is meant to be layered upon. Just going to come over the eyes with the same flesh tone as the skin. And moving down the bridge of the nose. So in between each layer, I'm cleaning my brush. This is one of the challenging things with acrylics, just, you know, getting kind of the hang of when to dip your brush in water, when to clean it off, because these paints contaminate really quickly. So it's really easy to, you know, get a color that you don't want on your brush. And we can just, you know, dab. Again, this isn't necessary. You can just feather your brush over the area, but I figured I'd introduce, you know, just a new technique into today's class, just to learn something new. Just layering side by side. You want to think about where you're starting and stopping your brush stroke when you're blending into areas to create those smooth transitions. I'm just going to use a little bit of white for highlight on the nose, bottom lip, chin, and maybe across the forehead. Okay, so there's our first head. So, you know, blending is an issue, just working sort of finely is an issue, but this is just a warm-up just to kind of get used to using these paints and blending these paints on the page. I'm just going to make the bridge of the nose slightly darker here. And you'll get a hang of it as you go along. Acrylics are quite sticky paint, so they really kind of stick to the page, and you do have to be careful that you're not lifting up previous layers of paint when you're adding new layers. So it helps to work large because it is difficult to get these really fine details with acrylics. But you get the hang of it. You start to get a sense of the way these paints dry and what you can do while they're wet, and the different sort of layers of paint that you're working with. So I'm just going to make a darker shadow underneath the chin. Okay, so that'll be face number 1. And now I'm going to prepare the next one, which we'll do using the Zorn palette.